One, two. That have been invited here, we said that we're going to start at 10 o'clock. And I emphasize that after 9, I won't be in front of the door helping people. I asked everyone to be early here. I think we have to stand up. Everybody have to stand up. We deal with our South African anthem.
Recording in progress.
Osisekeleni Afrika, malibabani zogololayo, itandazo yetu, osisekelela ina usapoloyo, urena uruge chabasa Yesu, umelizebele Jesus Yesu sichabasa South Africa, South Africa, India, and Osea, and the deep far Osea, and the vote of silence in terms of praying. Thank you. You can have a seat. As I said, my chiefs, we are starting the program now. Those who doesn't know me, I'm a Deputy High Commissioner, Chief Kalada, from the Royal Nama House. Today, we are starting our traditional leaders main sector. I will call upon Chief Sikau to welcome us all. Thandisizwe. Thandisizwe. We're giving him a chance to talk to us. Thank you.
Before I start this gathering, I would like to first invite the spirit of the late Nkosi Mahlangu, because I think it is befitting that we acknowledge his spirit in this gathering. As traditional leaders, we believe in one thing, that a person does not die, he departs. So, secondly, I want to also invite the spirits of all South Africans in and across the globe, that those who succumbed due to coronavirus. And thirdly, I want to invite the spirits of those who departed due to gender-based violence and femicide that has actually rooted our country. We have found ourselves in a second pandemic besides the COVID-19. In our midst, I want to acknowledge King Untitled Chapter from the Nama Royal House, and Queen Rebecca Como from the Nama Royal House. We are privileged that we've got a caring government who actually passed the law of the Cohen in February, as it was announced by the president. So we also want to acknowledge for the first time in our history the legitimacy of the Cohen in the House of Traditional Leadership and the Khoisan in South Africa. We want to convey our sincere gratitude to all South Africans that have elected the current government. And we've seen in our endeavors that we became now inclusive as we are gathering here. Thirdly, I want to acknowledge all the principal chiefs. I've seen it from the various houses, the principal chiefs from various regions. And indeed, it is the first time that as traditional leaders in the Western Cape, we have gathered in this format. I therefore welcome all the chiefs as well, and all the traditional leaders that are in this house today to come and feel free and to debate on issues, especially that those issues that are around the killing of women and children in our country. I also want to acknowledge the National Secretary and the entire leadership of the men's sector. Siyabulela mntwana omhlengo ukuze ungatyhafi. Kodwa ke njengoba sowufake i-traditional leaders, we also talk in spirit. So whatever your endeavors were will be fulfilled. I want also to acknowledge the provincial leadership of the men's sector, Mr. Barnes and Mr. Chingwana. You are also welcomed. I also want to welcome the representative of Provincial Commissioner Delegele Class. He is represented by Mr. Andile Nelani, who is the Deputy Director in Education and Training. He is here because correctional services were busy with partnering with them so that we can address and try to empty the prisons in South Africa. Because people who are there in prisons, they should be adding value to the economy. I therefore also want to acknowledge the NACOSA who made it possible, and other stakeholders. I won't know all of them, but I acknowledge their contribution towards this sitting. And also, I think DSD has played a vital role. Let me also welcome the other NGOs that are here. I've noticed Mr. Zahela for Shesvi. Enkosi Mhlekazi, siyabulela ube khona. You have played a vital role to the upliftment of. Also, I've seen Mr. Mdlalo, I think is here, from Langa Retail Academy. Those are I'm mentioning the few purposefully because they have already started to assist traditional leaders to run various programs in our communities. I will not be done if I didn't indicate clearly that we are gathered here today as traditional leaders to address and find remedies on GBV and femicide, including men's health. So feel free, traditional leaders, engage, but please raise issues that will be easily implementable. We don't want complicated strategies because people are losing their lives based on these issues that I've just mentioned. In conclusion, Chair, I just want to quote a well-known poet, Dr. Mzwakhe Mbuli, and I quote, "I wish the dead could rise and see what their sacrifices has become. I wish the dead could rise and see for themselves what their sacrifices has become." Close quote. I'm quoting this because we as men and traditional leaders, we didn't do enough to prevent the killings in this country. In that sense, I therefore challenge you to debate productively and put our differences aside to fulfill the purpose of this joint sitting. Thank you very much.
Let us say again to the speaker who seated down now, athandisizwe, athandisizwe. We must feel that we are in the traditional house sitting. And this sitting in history, it's a launch of traditional leaders, men's sector. As you know, our brothers, ourselves as traditional leaders, we've been saying that we've been sided in this parliament when things happening. Now I'll just go through to the open remarks. As I said, this is the launch of our traditional community leaders of the Western Cape. why I said community leaders. As you know, in this province, there's no recognition of traditional leaders yet. If we want to accommodate our province, it has to be shown that we are traditional community leaders, because we are not leading cows, sheep, we are leading communities. We know our province does have the cultural desk and doesn't have traditional leaders yet that are recognized. That is why I told myself I have to make it clear for us all to know I'm not excluding anyone. I'm greeting all the royalties who are here in the house. Especially on my right-hand side, King Como. I would like the house to show that the king is in the house. King Como. King Como. And his wife, Rebecca Como. Now, you know, according to the culture and tradition, and lucky enough, Rebecca Como is our queen. That is the reason why I want us to say today, Queen Como. Queen Como. Queen Como is in the house. I just want to announce that, lucky enough, as provincial launch of men's sector, we've got the National Secretary of Men's Sector, Professor Jasi. Just because I said Professor Jasi, guys, there's no sikahlela, or you don't even scream and say, we can even just say, Professor, Professor. Because for tomorrow, we don't want this house that is sitting here as if is promoting even professors to be traditional leaders. And we've got our chairperson of men's sector. And I want to differentiate traditional leaders, men's sector, and the men's sector. Men's sector started in 2015. Today, that is why I think Professor Jasi is gonna dwell on it. When did the men's sector started? But what is important is for us as traditional leaders to show from today we are part and parcel of the men's sector that is against the gender-based violence. Respectingly, as you know, traditional leaders, They like to hide using their culture when we abuse children, when we abuse women. Now, today is because we want to say, not on our name, not on our name as traditional leaders. When a traditional leader passing, seeing a man violating women's right, a children or a child's right, it shows that from today, we must take a stand. And as you know also, our traditional leaders, when you talk about screening, we run away far from screening to know our standard in terms of health. Now, as a traditional men's sector, that is why we are saying not on our name. We have to know that we form a part. We make relationship with health sectors to see and know that our standard in terms of health, it is good. And a traditional leader, as you know, is not a traditional leader as an individual. We are leading communities. How do you reflect into your own community that you are leading if you are not an example? Let me come to the second speaker. That is going to be our chairperson of men's sector. I would like him to address, because others who are sitting here, traditional leaders, they are asking themselves that why are we here? I think our chairperson of the province is going to tell us where does it start and what is our main role as traditional leaders into men's sector. I'll call upon Mr. Zolani Pans, the chairperson of the men's sector provincial, to address us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Galada, and greetings to the House. And I think my plea after today that with all these chiefs and kings that are gathered, that I at least have a small chieftaincy, and then I can be a chief in my next lifetime. Good morning, colleagues. I don't know, the energy in this room is very low. I'm not sure what is happening. Good morning once again, colleagues. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. Molweni tata. Nguzolani kaBhansi lo uJola umphankomo uqengebe ithole lomthwakazi. Ndiyazalwa ngolisa ojambasa omfene. Mandime apho. Bendinonabo. With that, I'm calling on, I think, my ancestors at this stage, and also acknowledging the man that I am and the man that stands in the gap. So I do have the role of having to lead the men's sector within the Western Cape. And it's a very challenging role because most of the time, with most things that are happening, men are always implicated. So it is very nice and beautiful to see, this house as full as it is. And it is also unfortunate that we also have some guys that are outside that, unfortunately, due to COVID and spacing, that they are not able to come in. I also want to state and remind the colleagues that this is a parliament sitting. So this is a serious thing. Today marks one of those days that you will remember because you are standing in the gap. As the traditional leaders and the traditional leadership of South Africa in the Western Cape, we're going to be thinking about what our role is as men and ladies. I was very pleased to see some of the ladies and the queens in the house because with men together at times, you do need that person that, that soft voice that can nudge you from time to time. So thank you for making time, beautiful ladies. I also want you guys to give a round of applause for yourselves. You look very beautiful. So please do that. Thank you. So I think mine is to really try and fit the pieces of the puzzle together so as to understand why we're here today. But also acknowledging that tomorrow is International Men's Day, right? So it is very fitting that we chose to be here today, and thanks to the provincial leadership as well as the national leadership that made this day possible. So I do want to then outline exactly what this is all about so as you can have an understanding of why we're here today and what is the objective. So the men's sector works through Takuwane Reime, which is basically the banner that our program encompassed. And this movement, and I'm saying it's a movement because we are advocates by nature. It is no surprise that we wanted this meeting to be in Parliament so as it can gain the weight that it deserves. This is just but one thing that we still need to do, colleagues, in terms of our leadership and particularly traditional leaders in communities. So I'm a boy from the Eastern Cape, so I know exactly what it means or the weight that the traditional leaders have in communities. I know the power that you guys hold as you're sitting in those chairs. And I know that you hold that power. But now we need to make momentum to try and move things as amadoda, as men, as traditional leaders. So what we do in this movement, we target men as well as boys. Because as Toseni City Bagotywa besebacha. So if you miss that boy, you may end up with some of those guys that Chief Skawo is looking after at correctional services. It is not a mistake, colleagues, that we have correctional services here. We are also trying to look at how we can rope in other stakeholders because we also cannot do this alone. So the men's sector as a sector is just a vehicle. Really, we were just in the background to try and get you guys together here so as we can talk about how we can make things move in this movement. So I'm not sure how much time I have, Prof, but I will spend some bit of time because I want this to be very clear. So we are doing this across South Africa. So I think today, Eastern Cape is sitting like we're sitting. Today, KZN is also sitting like we're sitting. Gauteng is sitting like we're sitting. So, yeah. So it is a movement. it is a movement, and I'm challenging again traditional leadership in the Western Cape to stand up, ma'am. Your voice needs to be louder than it actually is.
Yes.
Your steps needs to be louder than it actually is. So in essence, we want to convene and coordinate, the structures for men and boys formation. We want them to have, critical roles that they play. We need to mold these guys, as I've said, as they are still young, so as they know the role that they need to play within communities. One of our objectives as the men's sector within the Takuwane Reime movement is to enhance sharing of evidence-based information. Let's have those research findings so as they can inform some of the programs that we run. We again need the leadership to be able to get into those communities, traditional leadership, to be able to give us that intelligence in terms of, in my community, these are the challenges that these young boys are facing. How can men's sector support us? We are nothing without you. As I said, your voice needs to be louder than it is. Your steps need to be stronger than they actually are at the moment, particularly in the Western Cape. So we also want to then facilitate information, communication, as well as knowledge sharing with boys and boys formation. We want to build those strategic partnerships with various stakeholders and development agencies on issues. Colleagues, there are developmental agencies that are funding health programs. Those health programs need to be informed by what you guys know inherently by virtue of leading those communities. The solutions are sitting with each and every one of you that are sitting in this house. However, you need to speak louder than you're actually speaking at the moment. We also want to coordinate activities with other men's sector formations like we're doing right now. And also, most importantly, we want to inform government and partners about the needs that are identified in these groups that I've mentioned. As men's sector, we don't shy away from engaging political heads. And as I said, part of the reason we are intentional about having these sittings, we also have the men's parliament that sits at the National Assembly. I was addressing men around this time in November last year, with all provinces gathered, looking at what can we do as the men's sector. So we'll continue with this engagement, colleagues, ensuring that there are steps that we take and that we inform government what needs to be done. So what are some of our key messages as the Takuwane Reime movement? We do want to institutionalize the responsiveness of the men's movement by building capacity and strengthening, as well as the coordination of the civil society within the men's sector. We do want to create those entry points in the grassroots within the communities that you guys are leading. That's what we want to do. I hope you can see where you see yourself and how you fit into this whole agenda, into this whole movement. I'm encouraged, my leader, because part of what we were doing last year was we were saying no excuse. I like that. There's no excuse for us not to stand up and speak loudly and condemn gender-based violence. If we are not speaking against it, we are part of the problem. Colleagues, it's unfortunate that City Madoda, that most of the time are abusing women. Chief Galada was saying not in our name. We have been saying that. What are we doing? What is the commitment that we're going to have from the traditional leadership? I said in the beginning that, colleagues, you know you hold power within your communities. I know you know that. So as the Takuwana Reime movement, I'm told that I have only 1 minute. But I think as the chairperson of the sector in the province, I can take some privileges. I'm almost done, my chief. Public participation. So we want men that are vibrant and active in their community, that they participate in the activities that are happening within their communities. I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Or create those opportunities. That's a good one. Thank you, sir. I should have you help me write my speech next time. Accountability. We want men that can be accountable. We want communities that create an environment that men know that I am accountable. Rule of law. Colleagues, we can't just allow things to happen in our community and we turn a blind eye. We know who sells nyaupe in our community. We know who sells duck in our community. True. And in some cases, that's the very much same mashonisa that you go and borrow money from. Let's respect rule of law. Let's build communities that encompasses that. I'm almost done. So I'm urging us, colleagues, that we should not waste time by looking for good men. Let us be those good men. Yes. Let us not waste time looking for good traditional leaders, because we know we are those good traditional leaders that need to take action. Lastly, colleagues, traditional leadership is the cornerstone of who we are in our community. I'd like to acknowledge our national chairperson, Dando Yola, at this stage. Have a seat, Mhlekazi. As I was saying, as traditional leaders, note that I am putting myself in there because we had an agreement, mostly gentlemen and ladies agreement, that after this, I'll have Iskahlelo, Chief Galada. On a serious note, ladies and gentlemen, let us be intentional about what we're going to do today. Let us be intentional about the commitment that we are going to make today as traditional leaders, and make sure that when we leave today and when we acknowledge the International Men's Day tomorrow, that we start making steps towards better health. Because if we are going to live longer, we need to take care of ourselves as well as our communities. Yes. And I'm urging and I'm appealing that encourage your communities to get vaccinated. Encourage men to know their HIV status. Encourage men to adhere to their treatment. Because if we are going to do everything that we'd like to do, we need a healthy nation. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time, and let's enjoy the sitting. Thank you very much.
Can you give a chairperson of men's sector hands of applause again? So thank you to the provincial chairperson of men's sector. And what I like from what he was saying to us as traditional leaders is to take responsibility for you to show your community that there is a traditional leader into that community that will make a change. As you know, that Cape Flats is full of gangsters. What are you doing as a traditional leader? That is where he's pointing on us. He wants to see these things happening in our communities. A traditional leader leading as a leader. Now, my leaders, as traditional leaders, I'm going to call upon Nakosa. Is one of our development partners. That is, when I said our development partners, the men's sector partners, to come and give us a message of support. As traditional leaders, we want to hear from him to give him hand of applause. I don't know, no matter he just comes from a certain house, maybe he's got a cartel, or that is the clan name. But I know he's an official. That is why I want him to address us, because we don't want to look as if we are traditional leaders that are lost. Over to you, my partner.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
Molweni, Sanbonani, Tumelang. Thank you, Chief Galata. I'm Simo, Sithandatu. NdinguZulu, uNtombela, uMageba, uShaka kasenza ngakhona. Ndizalelwe kulaa mhlaba wasemaMpondweni kodwa Eastern Cape, specifically eLusikisiki. Ndimvelaphi yami isuka eStenga, abanye ke bathi kusempangeni. Kulapho I'm originally from. I'm sure Chief Galata sawuzazi izikhahlelo onganibiza ngaso. I don't want to take a lot of time. I just want to say, as I was coming, Prof. Jas is saying, "Gumduwe to Moslon," which affirms that I'm part of the men's sector. I'm part of the Western Cape Civil Society Forum as part of the provincial leadership in the Western Cape, and leading in the coordinating committee of the Civil Society Forum in the Western Cape. But I'm not here on behalf of the civil society. I'm here on behalf of NACOSA. As NACOSA, we are entrusted, or we have a task of supporting the initiatives that are done by communities, the initiatives that are done by civil society in the province. So when the men's sector sent communication to us to say, we need your support, we then said, yes, we can support you. That's our responsibility in any way. Because what we want to see programs being done in communities in response to what the chairperson was saying. There are a lot of issues that are affecting or happening in our communities that you find most men turn a blind eye on. I'm one of those men who always say, if we don't take responsibility as men, who will take responsibility? In the other place, I made an example. Those who understand chessboard. There's a king, there's a queen. Then there's pawns, there's other players there. What I asked people is, what is the responsibility of the king? Of which the responsibility of the king is to protect the queen. What happens when the king dies in chess? Game over. So are we those kings who are saying game over? Are we those men who are saying game over? You check the statistics, the majority of people who are not vaccinating are men. The majority of people who do not test for HIV are men. South Africa currently, in terms of suicide rate, is rating number 2. And the majority of those people who are committing suicide are men. You speak of mental health issues. The majority of people who are affected by mental health are men. What is it that you are doing to change that? So we've got a responsibility, and I'm happy when the chairperson is talking about focusing on young boys. I truly believe on that one. We should really be investing all our energies on making sure that as they grow with good values, respecting culture, but not using culture as a scapegoat to say, I can't do 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So without wasting time, Chief Galata, we just here to say we are in support of all the initiatives, of all the activities that will be taking place throughout the 16 days of activism. So any formations or any forums that would be sending or that would be doing such activities, we are open into saying you can invite us. We will see. Maybe we might have funds here and there to say we can support those initiatives, but for as long as they are for the community, we do not issue tenders, unfortunately. We support community initiatives. Thank you so much, Chief Galata.
Let us give him another claw again. Ladies and gentlemen, let us move forward. We're going to call the Regional Commissioner of Department of Correctional Services. As we know, when we abuse these children, these women, where we ended up. And now we start giving a task to other brothers of us. Now, let me call Mr. Klaas, because you find it out, we act as if we are not scared to go to the prison. Because you tell yourself that you're watching TV, you even say you get 3 plates of food per day. And we keep on blaming, pointing fingers to each other as if there's nothing that is happening by that department. I want Mr. Klaas to tell us. Tell us about the change of us men. Mr. Klaas, over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ndibulise kwinkosi eziphakathi kwethu nenkosana ndithi torhwana ndingaphazamanga izihlalo zabantu, all protocol observed. Can I just, Chief, correct one thing ukuthi igama ngu-Andilenelani, elami igama ndi-representa original commissioner Mr. Klaas udelekile. I'm Andilenelani, the regional coordinator education and training in the Western Cape. I'm originally from Hanover, a small city in the Northern Cape called Inobolo ngesiXhosa. Ndingumngqongo usophitsho yemingqolo msila. Untsundi ngonjani emnyama ebhabhi mafini uvela bampensele. Madiba. Ndiyabulela kakhulu. I'm very much proud that I'm given this opportunity to come here and explain the purpose of existence of the Department of Correctional Services and why we exist the way we do. I want to start by saying, I want us to take note that those people that are incarcerated in our care, they are sons, daughters, uncles, children of yourselves. True. Those offenders, they belong to you before they belong to politicians who are always at the time here. They belong to traditional leaders. So I'm very much proud to be here to come and say, what is it that we as a department are doing in making sure that we live up to the responsibility entrusted upon us by this parliament? We've got an Act 111 of 1998, Correctional Services Act as amended, that gives us 3 functions which are basic responsibilities of the Department of Correctional Services. One, to maintain a just and peace society by making sure that we implement all the laws which are passed by the courts. Punishments which the courts of this country are giving or meting out to those offenders, we need to implement them very much correctly by making sure that nobody who's sentenced for 10 years comes out from prison before completing that time unless there is a parole that this person is necessarily receiving as a privilege. Second function that we are responsible for is to make sure that those people who are incarcerated, we keep them in very much humane conditions so that we give them back their dignity, because Chapter 13 of the new Constitution of South Africa, Chapter 2, not 13, Chapter 2 on the Bill of Rights, talks to a manner in which we need to be rendering our own service as correctional services, that of promoting the human rights of whoever that is necessarily incarcerated in our care. That's why, therefore, whenever we keep them there, we need to make sure it's not true that prisons are hotels. It's not. But we want to make sure that those offenders that are given to us by the society will keep them in very much humane conditions so that we don't tamper with their dignity as human beings. But we don't keep them there to feed them only, but to make sure, especially with my responsibility, is to make sure that those offenders that are there, we transform them through rehabilitation interventions, education and training, psychological services, as well as social work services, and we give them their own health needs that the necessary would need from us as a department. And in our province, we started necessarily working with the chiefs long time ago. I think it's more than 2 years now. crafting a concept document that talks to the partnership that we want to see taking place between us. Because we're saying we'll find a situation where in most of our communities, you wouldn't necessarily have facilities and amenities that we want to have, which would necessarily help in the development of these children or these offenders. Because the majority of our own offenders that are in our care are very young people that are supposed to either be at school or necessarily they're working somewhere. But they're languishing in our jails because someone has necessarily decided to necessarily direct them differently. Now, we're calling upon, as the department, not only traditional leaders, but our first emphasis and point of call would be from you, because these people belong to you, those offenders. Today, we call them 28 in terms of numbers. They are 26 and all that, but we gave them names when they were home. Omni was Sipo, class and course. But today, they've got different names because they wanted to associate themselves with a particular group that is not helping their own development. Now, I'm calling upon you to come and join us as a department, because we do have another legal framework besides the Constitution as well as the Correctional Services Act. We've got a white paper on corrections in South Africa, which gives us a clear strategic direction on what to do with them. That's why now we're saying in chapter 3 of that white paper on corrections in South Africa, corrections is not only our responsibility, but it's a societal responsibility. Our doors are open for us to be part of that. So I'm asking everybody to join hands in us in terms of fighting crime. Yesterday, I was hosting the community safety at Overberg. I'm also acting in Overberg as an area commissioner. We had all the stakeholders necessary for crime prevention. The traffic was there, Department of Social Development, Police, all the other relevant departments to say that let's take all hands on deck. The province is starting a project called the area-based task teams that are working necessarily in developing developing also youth that is in conflict with the law, to make sure that we prevent them from becoming, criminals in their next lives. So I'm calling upon and humble myself to you, my leaders, to make sure that we take hands in making sure that we protect our society by building proper men. Because those men that are incarcerated there, they're supposed to be fathers and fending for their families there, but they're wasting time necessarily in our care. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Melanie. Now, I think you highlighted things that our men, as traditional leaders, didn't know, because we're always thinking that you're just feeding these perpetrators in prison. But you explain it to us. Now let me call upon Commissioner Wesley Moodley to come in front to give us a message of support. As a commissioner, out of the traditional leaders, we want to hear even traditional leaders at the certain corners, what are they doing in terms of preventing and protecting, because that is their role. You can come in front, my chief.
Thank you, Chief Kalada. Greetings, colleagues. Greetings, King Como, Queen Como, colleagues, friends. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak on today. And I think what we are about to talk about, or what we're engaging on, is much critical and much needed in our communities going forward. Yes, in our own sectors, as traditional leaders, as community leaders, we have to lift up
our sleeves and get to work. Otherwise, nothing will get done, because a lot of the time, we all that our communities have, when all the games are over and all the politicians go back, community looks to community leaders who don't need the recognition, but they are there. When they open their eyes, they are there. And we are the ones who's got to bear the brunt, of making things happen. Yeah. So I prepared a little, document that I'm just gonna read through, right? As I've done, a little research. And one of the things I wanted to know is, why do men, as perpetrators, resort to violence, especially in relationships? Because that's where we get this GBV, gender-based violence and so forth. But, unfortunately, most of it, we look at the perpetrators as being men. Okay, so for the sake of it, we're just going to look at that. All right. What are the common factors? And this is from a study taken in 2015, is that they use violence as an emotional abuse to control. All right. And that in their own home, and this is something that's very, very dear to me, because in our own homes is sometimes where men feel that they can rule. Because at other times, we don't have control in our workplaces. We don't have actually control in our communities. We don't actually have control, or we can't assert our authority, with other bigger men or men in control. So the only place you can assert your authority without any other objections is in your own house. So that's one of the things we have to look at, because in your own house, there is no sort of accountability. So it's all right for men just to do and to, do whatever we want to do. Is that we believe that a real man must be strong, that he must be powerful, and as the head of his household, he can do whatever he pleases. I'm glad that we're having this discussion on this level, because these are the things we need to filter out of our communities. In other words, we need to get the devil out of the details. So on this level, it's a pleasure, that we can discuss these, because these are things we deal with, on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that, that we as men is that, and I'm glad to see women here, but men believe that we're entitled to sex. We're entitled to it. So we must have it, and if we don't get it, then there's repercussions. Those are things we need to do in our communities. We're not taking responsibility for our actions, and we're also blaming loved ones. So we don't take responsibility, and we blame them for provoking us in lashing out to them. A lot of our men are resisting. We resist seeking help. And that is still a challenge for us. So we resist seeking help because of a few things. We avoid seeking help because we need to protect our macho image in our community. And that's something that we most probably have to look at. We fear, feeling ashamed. So therefore, we don't want to have a problem, but we don't want to go for help. And those are things we have to look at, Mr. Chair, is we have to make, make it available, easy available, discreet, but available so that we can then go for help. Yesterday, Chief Galada, while I was preparing, you know what came to mind? And it might shock you. But I grew up watching a caveman drag his woman into the cave. That was the image that was burned into it was seared into our heads. Growing up, we watched them. And the cave lady was happy being dragged. So therefore, we look at these type of images, whether it was a cartoon or not, but we look at it and we say, wow. I want to also encourage us that we need to look at, things as part as especially in the education sector. We need to grab these youngsters when they are young. We need to grab them when they're young. So I'm encouraging us, especially in Western Cape Education Department, is to see how we could, try to incorporate GBV into the curriculum. Because as a 43-year-old man standing here, I'm trying to figure out over the years, the 12 years that I was in school, what was I able to implement going out of school that I learned? Okay, so we need to look at that, Chair. And I think my time is up, so I need to cut. But thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to engaging. Going forward, our support at the center, where I work, the Center of Excellence, we have about 26, platforms, especially we use sport as a platform for youth to escape from them so we can grab them and then teach them so that in that platforms, we're able to work with them, and mold them, guide them, so that they can become better citizens, role models. Once we have them, we can also work with their parents and the affected parties so that we don't have these issues, so that they don't work to correctional services. One more thing, Chief Galadi, before I close, is that I'm glad that you mentioned about correctional services, is because while the individuals are incarcerated, community leaders need to see how we support the youngster on the outside while his parent is on the inside, so that he doesn't have, options, to lash out, but that we can also support him. So I thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Chief Moodley. Now, I'm going to call upon the Men's Sector Secretary, Provincial. That is Yanga Mjingwane, just to show us as traditional leaders, how do we deal with these issues? Now, this is going to be a dialogue with us as traditional leaders. I just want to speed up because of time. To say, Mr. Mjingwana, talk to us. Let us talk to each other. And you get points from us. Are we really men as traditional leaders or not? Thank you.
Inganga ninsebazayo ndinguTshangisa ndinguzulu ndingusikhoma ndingumhlatyana noRhudu. Okwam namhlanje kulula ukuvula idialogue kuthi sonke apha ngaphakathi. We must have a dialogue today. Traditional leaders kumcimbi wokuhlukunyezwa kwabantu abangoomama notata. So ispeaker nganye esawuphakama sasinika umzuzu kwenzela uba wonke umuntu olapha aphume ethethile and siphume sine resolutions zale ntlanganiso. And everybody will have a chance to speak with a dialogue. Let's feel free and discuss umcimbi wa gender-based violence in our country ne-women abuse. So each speaker sne 2 minutes to speak, and we debate, and we give each other time. When someone speaks, even if you don't like what he's speaking, give him a respect to her, so that you have that. This is a dialogue, it's open. There's no one that's bigger than anyone in the dialogue. Remember, sizindlu zenkosi ezahlukeneyo apha. I always say when we start this thing of the dialogue, particularly in men's, asina age up, but we have to respect each other. So now I will open the dialogue. Maybe when you stand up so that everybody knows who's here, we'll give you that time, we discuss gender-based violence and abuse of men. The question is, we are saying, or the women of this country saying that the traditional leaders are quiet about what's going on and outside we abuse. Kuthiwa nithule zinkosi. Abanye benu bathi into yamandulo le, umfazi uyabethwa, umntana uyabethwa. Ingaba ithini naloo nto zinkosi zakuthi?
Ian